think that question leads into a whole training philosophy, really. So let's back up for a second. The human body is a complex system. Now, complex is different from complicated. Your washing machine is complicated, but your human body is on a whole other level. The interactions between systems produce nonlinear effects. So just because you do more volume doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get more result. It could mean a little bit better result, or it could mean a lot better result, or it could mean a negative result, or it could mean a whole host of different things, and it's not inherently predictable. Okay, so one thing that we've done with periodization and training planning in general is we've met complexity, the complexity of the human body, with more complexity. Okay, ever increasing complexity in terms of monitoring training, in terms of planning training, and interlocking cycles within cycles, and benchmarking this off of that, and all these different things. And I don't think that works. I think you're adding more and more and more noise, and it makes it harder to see the signal. So one thing that I've done, especially, I say lately, it's over the last several years, has been to radically simplify the training process. Instead of applying ever-increasing complexity to a complex system, let's simplify the inputs as much as we possibly can and see what we can learn from the outputs. See if we can learn a bit better about the system. You still are dealing with a complex system, and you're still going to get those nonlinear effects. But that's kind of the underlying philosophy. Okay, so what might that look like? If I give someone a program, we're going to, let's say it's a training week, all right? On Monday, you're going to do this workout, Tuesday's workout B, Thursday's workout C, and Friday's workout D, A, B, C, D, okay? We're going to basically repeat that workout 1 week after the next, okay? So Monday week 1 and Monday week 2 are going to be exactly the same. And when I say exactly, I mean the same exercises, the same reps, the same sets, and the same RPE. So for me, the load is going to change, because what I really want is I want the same stimulus on your body. And if you've gotten a little bit stronger or a little bit weaker, we need to adjust the weight on the bar so that the stimulus is the same. Okay? So all that stuff is held constant every week, and we monitor your performance. So, this week you squatted 200. Next week you squat 202, and the week after that you squat 200 again, and then you squat 205, and we're monitoring your results, and we're looking for a peak condition. And everybody hits this peak condition at slightly different time intervals. You'll have some people, just a maybe slightly too nuanced point for where we're at in this discussion. The time to peak condition is linked primarily to the number of exposures, much more so than the time interval. Now, in the example that I gave, we're doing 1 microcycle per week, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, every week repeats. So it's, if you peaked in 6 microcycles, that's going to be 6 weeks. Now, you may do a workout that's an A-B workout. So you could still train 4 days a week, and you get 2 microcycles a week instead of 1. If you peak in 6 microcycles, that'll be 3 weeks. Okay, so if none of that makes sense, don't worry about it yet. You can come back to it later. So the idea is that you find this time to peak, and it varies from lifter to lifter. Some lifters peak in about 3 exposures. Others peak in 10, 11, 12 exposures, and it depends on the lifter. It depends on, to some extent, the kind of stimulus that you're giving them. But as long as it's not crazy, then this time to peak seems to be fairly constant. So I know for me, it's about 6 exposures. And unless I get crazy with the volume or crazy with the overall stress of the workouts that I'm planning, it's going to be about 6 exposures. So what I can do at that point is I'll run that block until I hit this peak condition. And then I've monitored my results, right? So back to the core of your question is, how often do you switch exercises and how do you know which exercises work the best? Well, I switch exercises as often as the athlete needs it. So if I peak in 6 exposures, then I'll go through a microcycle 6 times. And then when I've reached that peak condition, then it's time to change the stimulus. This is called a development cycle. Okay. After that development cycle, you follow it up with, we call it a pivot cycle, which you can think of it like a deload, but there's a bit more to it than just a deload. And it takes roughly a third of the time that your development cycle took. So if your development cycle took 6 weeks, then your pivot is going to take 2 weeks. You're reducing your overall training stress. You're reducing the intensity, changing the stimulus. Basically, it's a down period in your training. And then you follow that up with a new development cycle. And this new development cycle will be very different from the one before it. It'll be different exercises, different intensities. The competition lift will stay the same, but basically everything else changes in some way. You want to change the stimulus in a pretty dramatic fashion. So how often do you change exercises? Well, you change them each development cycle. And the length of the development cycle, it depends on how long the athlete responds to a stimulus. If you respond quickly and then you're done with it, then we'll change exercises quickly. If you continue to adapt to a stimulus for a long time, then we'll take a lot longer. How do you know if it's effective? Well, you can look back on these training blocks and get a really good idea of what's most effective for you.